In the dark, I play my dreams. Permaculture flows like sweet streams. I'm the daddy with the know-how seed. Green in the world like it's meant to be. Permaculture, P-I-M-P, I'm the king. Wrapping up in everything. Bringing change, making it last.
Welcome to episode 337 of the Permaculture Pimpcast, where PIMP stands for Permaculture is my passion. The only Pimpcast on planet Earth where we discuss permaculture, preparedness, practical living, and sometimes prostitutes.
Permaculture, P-I-M-P, with soulful rays in the P-I-Pimpcast, where we find out.
Oh, yeah.
Feed by the earth.
All right, y'all, this is going to be another kind of a midday thing that I'm not really used to doing a whole lot of. But anyway, this episode, as always, brought to you by Hickory Ridge Soap from TwoOldCrowsHomestead.com. Turn that simp into a pimp. Bam! Living Soil Foundation, y'all. We're cleaning up Western North Carolina, still waiting on those test results. And when we get them in, we're going to be blowing those minds, because guess what? We did it with all the wonderful, the good things the good Lord has put on this planet. And folks, we are going to, I think nobody's going to believe what we were actually able to do in 6 months. You're not going to believe it. But anyway, we're waiting on those test results, and I know they're right around the corner, but hey, they're coming. Anyway, I want to handle all the housekeeping up front because I got my guest on here, and I don't want to break the flow. If you need one of those, remember, every single podcast, y'all, I'm G'd up from the feet up, and that means grounded, because I'm being bombarded with EMF 365 all the way around here. Even my high-speed Pimpcast sign is not necessarily putting off the wonderful things for me. So, you know, cracking a window over here and mitigating some of it by putting my bare feet on this grounding mat is helping a little bit. Anyway, if you want some of that, go over there to redemptionshield.com, 10% off with promo code PERMA. EMP Shield, $50 off with promo code PERMA. Remember, the worst thing, the most threatening thing that can happen to your place is a lightning strike. That's the most common. Anyway, if anything gets past this EMP shield, they're going to cover you for 25 G's. So, yeah, that's like getting money from home without watching. And remember, without writing anyway, because that brings me into my next advertiser, Wave Watch. Billy 100 will get you $100 off that watch that puts out those awesome Solfeggio tones. So you can get yourself all squared away. Okay, look, I got a lot more advertisers out there, and I got more coming, folks, but I don't want to kill any more time because I have limited time with my guest coming up right now. He's from the Sowing Prosperity podcast. Now, a lot of people are going to ask, well, why would you bring another podcaster? Folks, if you haven't watched, I mean, I've brought a lot of them on over the years. Couple of years I've been doing this podcast anyway. I was made aware of his work a while back because of an interview that he did with Dr. Jack Cruz, and then he did another interview, and then I go back and I subscribe to his podcast, and I'm like, good night. This guy is knocking my socks off with the guests that he's had on. Better still, he's knocking my socks off with the questions he's asking. So I said, okay, I got to reach out to this guy. Sent an email, had a phone call with him, and it turns out that he's my brother from another mother. And without further ado, we're going to bring on Logan Duvall. Boy, I don't know why I'm so doggone tongue twisted. How you doing, my man?
I'm good, brother. How are you?
I'm good. Man, I tell you what, it was, I've listened to, I don't even know how many podcasts with Dr. Cruz, and without a doubt, the best ones I've ever heard from him were coming from you. And I didn't know the full extent of, I mean, it wasn't just that podcast, it was the other ones you did as well. And I've been kind of binging your stuff as well. Man, before I get into any of that, I got to ask you, what's your backstory, bro? You're a superhero in my view, and every superhero has an origin story. So why don't we start right there?
Yeah, no, thanks, Billy, for inviting me on and sharing the story and the work. I'm really excited about how passionate you are. And your desire to learn and excitement has kind of fueled me. It's we put in a lot of work behind the scenes on these projects, these passion projects, and so it's it's really gratifying to have those positive words. So thanks, brother. I am just an Arkansas boy, right? Grew up in a small town. about 2,000 people. Grandparents farmed, they roofed, ran restaurants, right? Mom was 17 when she had me. So, her and I grew up together, right? So small town, rural, it's part of just, life for us. Fast forward, spent time, going to school, worked on pipelines, petroleum industry, right out of college, went into EMS. The EMS was a very, very good experience. It gave me a lot of insights into how society functions that we don't see unless you're in that, and that's a big deal. And that I learned a lot from it, but also how to deal with stress, how to perceive things that we think are stressful versus what you see when you've got somebody trapped in a car upside down at 3 a.m, right? Like there's this wide range of things. And so fast forward, that wore me out. I got into real estate, just trying to learn and just be the most successful person from my small town was Tony Moore, and he had a real estate company. So I went to work for him just because I wanted to learn and wanted to understand how to be successful in business and things. And so a little bit later, my grandfather comes down with his second bout of cancer. So the first time was non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. The second time was a esophageal that had metastasized to the liver, and that's when it really bad. But they had started a small produce stand outside of North Little Rock. So this is about an hour from where I grew up and where I was living, and still working EMS and doing real estate. And so as my mom left her corporate job to help run the little farm stand and make it grow, and started really utilizing social media, and that is what really blew it up. And he finally passed away in 2016, and so I was like, I got to move down there and help my mom and grandma kind of keep going. It's like, what do I do? So I left real estate, left EMS completely, came down and started growing the business, and it started just taking off. Really active in local foods and regenerative farming, and trying to understand and build community and do the things that I felt like were going to make an impact and run a successful business, right? So about 2019, I get blindsided with my little boy. He was 5. He says, "Dad, my pea's orange." This is after a day of working out at the market. He and his sister were playing in the sprinklers, just being kids. And it's like, "Your pea's orange?" I was just trying to chill on the couch, right? Watch a little TV. And I get up and I was like, this just doesn't make sense. So I go in there and it was blood. He was peeing blood.
Wow.
And so fast forward, we end up in children's. And I remember sitting there as he's laying in that bed, and I look out in the hallway while we're trying to figure it out, and I see a group of doctors. There's about 5, 6, just in the white coats, and they walk in slowly. And I just knew, right, like whatever you're about to tell me is not good. And that first doctor comes up and he said, "Come here, I need to show you something." And so I walked over to Lander laying on the bed, and he grabs my hand and pushes it on his belly. He said, "What do you feel?" I said, "Something hard." And so we found out he had cancer, right? It was a cantaloupe-sized tumor on his kidney, had metastasized to lymph nodes in his chest wall. And so in this moment, right, of just complete life ambush, as Jason Redman words it, it just changed everything. Like in an instant, it was, what do we do, right? Like the doctors are going to do their part, God's going to do his part, Daddy's going to do mine. But what is that? And so, we can get in more specifics. It has just been a pursuit of trying to save my baby, right? And he's cancer-free. He's been cancer-free for 5 years now, doing great. But the journey has been extremely, challenging. And we've learned and been able to help so much. So that is the genesis, and there's been a lot more since then, but maybe that lays it out.
No, that's a really good start, man. I can't even imagine the kick in the Jimmy that must be to get that kind of news. I mean, and having been in the situation where we've had family members that have gone through similar things. I mean, one of them, my nephew, and the other one, my niece, one of them with a glioblastoma. I mean, in knowing what I know now, I'm starting to suspect where the origins of all that could have happened. But man, I can't even begin to imagine what that must be like. And, as a parent myself. So I mean, what did that look like? Let's talk about that because I think it opens up so many other doors. I mean, what did his treatment, what did it look like, and were you aware of the things you are now, or did that put you on the journey to start asking critical questions about the mainstream medical model?
Well, I knew from the time in EMS, right? That lens and grandma, she's a 50-year nurse. Dad's a pharmacist, right? Like, so I've been in and around medicine a long time, and I didn't question any of that at the time. But when I asked the oncologist, what do I feed him? And they said it doesn't matter. It did not matter what I fed him. And then they tried to give him like Sprite, which I didn't let them have any of that. We were not perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but I was pretty cognizant about them not having, super garbage foods. And so that didn't seem right to me. And then so we go through, he has surgery pretty early on to remove that cantaloupe size kidney tumor and some of the lymph nodes. And then we begin chemotherapy and also radiation. He had 16 rounds of radiation because he still had it in that the chest wall as well. And I remember sitting in the radiology department at UMS, and the radiologist tried to give him a candy, like it was like a Snickers or something, and I'm like, no, we're not doing that. And so the first layer that I was trying to understand is like, what's an appropriate cancer diet? What's a healthy diet, right? And so started going into I think the China study was one of the first books that I read. And while I don't agree with it now, it was very eye-opening that there was at least an approach, and we're trying to tie things together. And so kept diving. Dave Asprey was a huge influence on me early on. So in this biohacking realm, questioning things, going against the grain, started bringing up the game changer for me was a podcast Dave did, and they mentioned insulin potentiated chemotherapy. And so this is, you make chemo more effective or even at a lesser dose depending on the glucose levels, right? So insulin and fasting blood sugar. So I took that as I tried to understand, but Lander was always in a fasted state when he received chemo. And I think that was really important looking back. Got lucky on a whole lot of things because I really didn't know anything, and kept going. And then I found that the immunotherapies, and he did not receive immunotherapies, but in the studies that the immunotherapies were effective or not, depending on different bacteria. So depending on the gut microbiome, they worked or they didn't work. And so I asked a different oncologist. He wasn't, he wasn't our oncologist, what he thought about that. And he had been an oncologist for 40 years, a pediatric oncologist. And he said, well, I don't know anything about the gut microbiome. And so I started seeing some chinks in the armor, right? Like I realized there's some areas that I have to understand, going back to that whole, the doctor's going to do their part, God's going to do his, I'm going to do mine. Where do I focus on the things I can control and we apply? So cleaning up that diet, making sure we have appropriate minerals. How do we build that gut microbiome? That's where I started. And then, so every nutrition book, especially if it has anything to do with cancer, I have read it, and probably talked with the author if they're still alive.
I'm just blown away because it's funny that you said that you asked the oncologist, hey, what should we eat? It's funny because I had another guy on the program, Jason from Sow the Land, has a very successful YouTube channel discussing, things you do on a farm. Anyway, Jason's a friend of mine, and he recounted the very same thing, that when he had gotten to the other side of his cancer diagnosis, okay, you got a clean bill of health now. His question, and his wife too, was to the oncologist, okay, what do we eat now? What do we do? And they said, well, you don't change anything. And they thought just like you, I mean, said almost word for word what you said. Like, this is the most bizarre thing I've ever heard in the world. Clearly my environment or what I'm putting into me must have something to do with where I landed up here. And, they got the same exact answer. So that had to start asking, I'm sure that response, well, as you said, it made you start asking critical questions about the allopathic care system. So regarding your son, you said he's okay. He's got a clean bill of health. He's on the other side of this. Now, a lot of other people that I know that have dealt with this sort of thing just kind of fall back into the matrix or whatever lifestyle they had. Apparently it didn't have that effect on you because, as I understand it, I mean, that this whole thing kicked in you a need, a desire, I dare say a passion to go out there and find out, hey, let me kick the tires on what we're told out here. So what did that look like for you?
Yeah, it's Billy, to be completely honest, it's probably an unhealthy obsession. I can't turn it off. Like I honestly, I still lose sleep at night over the entire situation. That the what ifs. Am I doing enough work? Am I putting it in? Do I understand this fully? Are we making the right decisions? So no, there's definitely no slipping back to any sort of the matrix. I just can't turn it off. And this is why I'm so passionate about having those conversations on the podcast, why we have the support groups, why Dr. Petra and I do what we do. It's constant. She's as obsessed as I am on that naturopathic integrative oncology components. And so, yeah, with every layer that you understand, you realize something is missing. Right. And then when you get into a different field, you understand that there's more, and there's so much that we don't understand, and it gets super complicated. But when you start seeing that these cancer diets don't work for everybody, they don't work for a lot of people, honestly. Keto doesn't work for everybody. Keto for cancer definitely doesn't work for everybody. Why? Why is that? Why is deuterium a thing that matters for somebody with cancer? What is this all about the light? And so I was introduced to Jack through a friend, Max Goldhain. He's an Australian MD, and he does a great job. The Regenerative Health Podcast. He's big on the regenerative agriculture as well. Max does a great job. He's a wonderful, wonderful person. He had Jack on, and they start talking about light, and I'm like, who is this dude talking about light? So go through that podcast, and I end up going on to Rick Rubin's podcast that Jack did with Andrew Huberman, and Jack lays it out even more there. So I start seeing this is so different from anything I've ever told, and it makes sense. And he's poking holes on why that keto doesn't work for everybody, why the sunlight is actually integral to our well-being. Cancer is not what we're told to think. I know Thomas Seyfried, and he gets brought up all the time that cancer is a metabolic disease, which, I agree with that. But Seyfried doesn't go deep enough. When you start understanding the light is the Archimedes leveler that controls metabolism, that's a big deal, right? So when you start seeing all these little things, and when Jack's work comes into, and the three-legged stool of Jack is light, water, magnetism. And that sounds crazy. Like, how does that have anything to do with life? Well, it starts opening you into a lot of other fields of study, right? Like, you got to get into physics. You got to get into biophysics. You got to learn that we produce light inside of our body. Like, he led me into Robert O. Becker's work, right? Body electric, like collagen. Boom, there it is. Collagen is an electromagnetic conductor. What? It's piezoelectric, it's flexoelectric, it produces energy, and so you start seeing this system in a whole different way, which has led me into, I talk to probably physicists more than I talk to anybody else at this point, because that is where we're going to have those massive breakthroughs. And that's why the oncologist is going to say, well, it doesn't matter, because you've got to be able to understand more than just cell division in order to overcome any sort of a chronic metabolic disease.
On that same point, there's a number if you didn't know, Logan, we are live on YouTube right now. And, Tim says, same thing. I asked my GI doc when my wife was diagnosed with Crohn's disease. His words, once we find the right medicine, she can just eat whatever she wants. And food is definitely playing a role in this. But like you, I had that, as Jack Kruse often says. And folks, when we're talking about Jack Kruse, we're talking about a neurosurgeon, probably the smartest doctor on the planet, in my view.
Not even a close second.
Yeah, I don't even think there is a close second. I don't agree with him on everything. It's not important what the nature of those disagreements are, but where I do agree with him are his conclusions regarding light, water, and magnetism. And of course, Logan knows light years more than I do about it. And so when I started looking into this, I'm like, okay, man, I got to go a little bit further, man. I could tell by the questions you were asking that you were way further down the path in this than I have. But I have started following the protocol, my wife and I, religiously, get up, oh dark 30, get out there, do the chores, look after the animals, get the things done. And as the sun's rising, we're sitting there looking dead at it, bare feet, the whole 9 yards. And because I live so rurally, man, yeah, I'm stark naked sometimes out here. So, I mean, it is what it is. So, for the people out there, because I'm hoping, folks, if you understand, I'm usually not at a loss for words. The reason why I am at this moment is because if you can just open your mind just a little bit. Remember, Jack Kruse was a centralized doctor, became decentralized when he figured this out. And you're thinking, okay, what on earth does any of this have? So let's get down to brass tacks on that, Logan. So maybe talk to me. Let's talk about the light and the importance of it. Not only the morning light, the midday light, or when we shouldn't be looking at light. I mean, talk to me about light and its importance and the role in your life.
Let me lay a little bit of a foundation for Jack, if you don't care.
Sure.
He is a very polarizing figure. He's very gruff. He's a brilliant man. He's arrogant. He is abrasive. He does not care what anybody thinks. And he's beyond brilliant. Okay, so a lot of people don't like the man, and he does not hold back on anything. But Jack went to Connecticut as a dual MD DDS. So he was a dentist doctor out of Connecticut. He went to LSU to become an oral surgeon. His grandpa had an oral melanoma. That is what has fueled his passion and why he went dental route and then oral surgeon, because he really connected with the oral surgeon that was taking care of his grandpa. He kind of fell into getting into LSU's neurosurgery program, right? And so that story doesn't really matter, but that is how he became a neurosurgeon. So he was a doctor, dentist, oral surgeon, then neurosurgeon. So the training and experience is out of this world. He had his own life impact that I would highly recommend you listen to some of his podcasts to where you hear that, to where it was a punch in the mouth, like he would say, to where he started questioning everything because he had his own issues. And so that genesis is really important to the understanding, because I wouldn't be here without Jack. Jack is my mentor. I've done many podcasts with him, blessed to be able to communicate because he doesn't open up to everybody. So when I come at this of trying to understand the light, the water, the magnetism, he has to get all the credit. I have put in a lot of the work, like probably 10, 12, 13,000 hours of trying to understand it and bridge together other people's work, whether that's Becker, Roland Van Wyck, Fitzpop, on and on and on, right? So when we look at how Jack describes it, he's big on understanding that these light inputs are what really fuel the body, okay? And this is through a protein called POMC, pro-opioid melanocortin pathway. This is a protein that is inside of our body, typically in fat cells, but it's throughout. And it is activated by light, by UV light specifically. The same spectrum we're told is going to kill us and cause cancer is dependent on this. So we do know that vitamin D is UV specific, right? We cannot synthesize vitamin D without UVB spectrums. We can't get a tan. So now when we go to tan, we're going to reverse engineer this one. So I'm hoping I can lead people to what POMC is. Melanin is what gives us a tan. It's the pigment. It gives us eye color, hair color, a tan, all of these things, but it's not just on our skin. It's everywhere throughout the body, and it is a semiconductor that coordinates all of these electromagnetic signaling within the body. It's unbelievably important. So if you ever notice that you have a tan and then you lose it, maybe you're through winter or you're on an airplane, like there's lots of ways, because the melanin is pulled internally to be able to be utilized within all organs. When that's gone, nothing works properly. Just how it is. Now, how do we get melanin? Melanin starts with this POMC product that we're talking about, okay? So we have POMC is then broken down into about 7 different cleavage products. These are smaller proteins that then have different functions. Those functions can go from metenkephalin. This is part of the endocannabinoid system. Beta endorphins. This is an opioid. So we're actually being able to modulate the immune system, pain, through this POMC protein and light, of course. So we've also got melanin stimulating hormone, MSH. So this has to be cleaved from POMC, then into MSH, and then we have the process of having to utilize dopamine, copper, tyronase into the process to create the tan. So if any of these things are broken, we cannot create melanin appropriately. Okay. So when we, again, I cannot emphasize enough, we don't have melanin in the right spots, things don't work properly. If we do not get these light inputs, we cannot generate any of the, and that is just part of them, right? I said there's 7 different cleavage products. I just named 3 right in there. We need to look at also blood. All right, Billy, this is a big one. I'm trying not to jump too far and too over the place, but blood actually, hemoglobin looks like, a lot of your listeners are going to be in the ag world. Hemoglobin and chlorophyll look very, very similar, right? They have these porphyrin rings. It's just chlorophyll has magnesium in the middle of it. Hemoglobin has iron in the middle of it. So actually, we can absorb more of this electromagnetic energy from the sun into the hemoglobin than plants can with chlorophyll. Okay, so this is then spread throughout the body. So our skin and our blood are essentially solar panels and the transfer mechanism of energy within the light that goes to all the cells, mitochondria, and everything. So you just stop me if I'm going too much too, because when this system is this input, but we also have a system that goes out. So anytime that we're talking about, like with agriculture, with the water cycle, with the carbon cycle, we have all cycles, right? It comes in and out. Well, we have light the same way. So we have UPEs, ultra weak biophotons. These are generated inside of our cells. Now, this starts in the mitochondria. Mitochondria, through the electron transport chain, through metabolism, through the different cytochromes, we produce light, water, carbon dioxide, ATP. All of these things happen. They also receive light. And so it's going to be really important that we hit on the water, the CCO as well. But when the mitochondria produce light, this is where we have to go into the work of Fritz Popp, Maywin Ho, and Roland Van Wyck. When the mitochondria produce light, it's either in a coherent state, it's delayed, or it's erratic, or maybe it's not enough, and it's contained inside this system. Well, DNA is a absorber and emitter of this light as well. So DNA with histones are inside chromatin. So there's another cycle of light even inside the cell between the mitochondria and this chromatin. We know through the work of Popp and Wyck that the chromatin in a healthy cell has a delay and it lasts long. It's very coherent, right? And so it's not an erratic signal. Think of music playing and everything's offbeat. It doesn't sound good. It's awful, versus like a melody that is going and it's flowing and it's lasting. So with a cancer cell, this light that gets emitted is very short. It doesn't last. It has to be charged. It's called delayed luminescence. In a healthy cell, you have a longer and a more coherent pattern that the light is emitted. Okay, so we have to be charged, and we also produce this inner light. You also do that with cold. This entire system, when it's thrown off, causes disease, causes chaos, causes inflammation, right? All of these interchangeable words for why we're sick. The CCO, so this is the complex 3, we have a generator of water, okay? This water is deuterium depleted. It is very clean, pure, and it reduces the electric potential of the inner mitochondrial membrane. So when we look at like Nick Lane's work, he wrote Power, Sex, and Suicide. He's a mitochondrial scientist, done amazing work around this. We have the equivalent of a bolt of lightning in energy being produced. Okay, that's crazy. That should just make us say, what? Because of the scale, it's gone down. That's how you get the equivalent. So how do we keep from getting shocked? If we're producing in our mitochondria lightning bolts, how are we not getting shocked? Well, that's this water. It's the water, right? The water reduces the electric charge, because there's nothing in it. It's super clean, deuterium depleted water. Then it goes to the melanin. Melanin then absorbs and it emits. So we are turning light into a DC current that melanin is controlling. So that whole cycle is unbelievably complex and beautiful in the design. And when we don't have any of those, so if we're dehydrated, right, we're burning up melanin. If the we don't have the infrared inputs and the CCO is not able to create this metabolic water, then we're dehydrated and we're destroying melanin. All right, so this is the light side. Hopefully that makes sense.
No, let me just respond for just a second there, because as an electrician, the way I when I learned about this, the way I looked at it, and it might help others out there that may be a little confused, because I know you're getting hit with a lot here. And by the way, Logan, judging by the comments, man, you're doing a bang up job of explaining this. But anyway, your melanin is basically a sheath on there, and nothing is a better insulator than melanin when it's hydrated. So when you're putting out something, your body's electrical charge is putting out something that's the equivalent of a bolt of lightning. The only way to keep that charge in place is you have got to have an insulator that is off the charts. And correct me if I'm wrong, there's no better insulator than melanin. And
the water.
Right.
The water,
or the deuterium depleted water. So if you don't have that, then what you got is like a wiring harness with every other wire with a short in it, and it's jumping all over the place. So if you don't have that, and correct me if I'm wrong, it all starts with adequate light.
Yep.
Sunlight.
The mitochondria really are kind of the spider on the mirror, as Jack says. It is the opposite. So photosynthesis and cellular respiration is the opposite, right? So we know that through light, carbon dioxide, and water, we create glucose. Plants do. And this is photosynthesis. The opposite of that is we take this glucose and we actually create ATP. We take water and carbon dioxide, right? We reverse it, right? The end result of photosynthesis is sugar and oxygen, and the end result for us is carbon dioxide, right? That's why we breathe off carbon dioxide. Water, this is the metabolic water, and ATP. And this is also really important to realize that ATP does not have the enough power, so to speak, because we're taught mitochondria are the powerhouse of the cell. ATP is the energy currency. It doesn't work. Like the numbers don't actually work. That
ATP doesn't produce enough to account for all the power output. Okay.
No, it's not possible. And this is where we have to understand that the E equals mc squared, Einstein's equation, that this is where light comes in. It has no mass. This is why the body uses it. This is why all biological systems use it. There's no mass. It's all energy. And so this is where you take light energy using melanin, and you're able to turn it into this DC current that is responsible for powering life.
Man, I think that's fantastic. So before we move over to the water, I just got to ask. I mean, everybody's being told the polar opposite, whether it's the prostitute on TV or whether it's the centralized doctor. Everybody's telling you to stay out of the sun. I've never been darker in my life because I've gone, like I said, I'm out there every single day, all day in the sun. When most farmers and most people in construction do it all backwards. We do our work in the morning, and then we try to avoid it during the day because we're told not to, and then we come back out in the evening. Meanwhile, your window to even get vitamin D, the sun's, depending on your latitude, sun's got to be a certain, you only have a narrow latitude depending on, or window to even get or make vitamin D when the sun's out. So a lot of times we miss all of that by either working inside, never going outside, the whole 9 yards. So real quick, what are your thoughts on that? I mean, it seems to me that the dermatologists and everybody else are telling us the polar opposite of what we ought to be doing.
Well, I think we can judge how that advice is working out with the health crisis that we're in, right? Like it's not working. Something's not working. And everybody has a theory on why it's not working. If it's glyphosate, if it's seed oils, if it's red dye number 40, right? I'm telling you, it's the sun, it's the light. That's the problem. The other things, they matter, but like this is the foundation. And so when you are unable to make melanin, right? You don't have UV light, nothing works properly. If you understand what I just laid out, when you do not have the infrared light, nothing works, right? You're not able to make the metabolic water that is vitally important within this system. We do not have the inputs that are then that Archimedes lever that controls all things metabolic. So like you're missing everything when we do that. The flip side is that in an artificial light, melanin has an 80 times affinity for blue light. This is actually the most rare spectrum in nature, but we are exposed to it more than anything in this artificial environment. So a blue screen on a phone, a computer, the lights, the LEDs. Just think about go to the refrigerator right before bed. You want to get a little drink. You're getting blasted by light. I mean, it's absolutely everywhere. Vanity. Think about when putting on makeup and taking it off, and you've got the LED light. So what happens is melanin breaks down, and I gave you some of those precursors for melanin and why that's so important. But as melanin breaks down, dopamine, you get a melanin hit when you destroy or a dopamine hit when you destroy melanin. Okay, so blue light, that addictedness that we have of these phones and stuff, and I'm addicted. I'm not trying to sit here and preach from a high horse. I just understand why I'm addicted too, you know. So we're on this blue screen and we think it's simply the algorithm that's giving us the hits. That's not the only thing that's giving us the hits. It's that blue light is absolutely making us addicted in of itself. And that breakdown of melanin provides dopamine. That dopamine gives us that feel-good feeling. And then over time, it actually turns into Parkinson's, right? It turns into some sort of a metabolic condition as we destroy more and more and more internal melanin.
This is absolutely insidious when you break it down, especially when you hear Dr. Jack talk about the history of how this was discovered by the mob and how they use it to this day, and how they could easily, the tech industry could have easily turned all of these computers. There's a reason why they're all blue light, folks. It also makes you easily controllable. That's why the mob, when they leave you in the casino, they have no outside lights there. You ever notice that? They don't have to beat you over the head and steal the money anymore. You're going to give it over when they give you a little bit of alcohol, scampy women, and you got these scallywags handing you drinks when you're at the one-armed bandit. The whole 9 yards. I mean, and plus when you pull out that phone and you're looking at it unprotected, and then of course there's also the flicker rate. So you may be away from the blue light, but you still got the flicker no matter what. Folks, we're just trying to make you aware that they're shot in the arm, shot in the head. Either way, you wind up dead if you follow their prescriptions. So, real quick, Silver Sage. Look, we can't give you medical advice here, but you say your 6-month-old just had a doctor appointment. They say apply sunscreen every time the baby is in the sun. Based on what you heard right now, well, let me just ask Logan. I know we can't give medical advice, but if you had a child that was a 6-month-old right now, Logan, how would you go about it?
So I had 4 kids, right? The oldest one is the one we've talked about the most, down to 4 years old. We do not do any sunscreen at all. None. Now, we need to be smart, right? We need to be smart. That doesn't mean that you hide from the sun 11 months and 3 weeks of the year, and then we go to the beach with sunglasses and no sunscreen, all right? So you have to do what is referred to as like a solar callus, gradual exposure. The only thing that's actually going to give a burn is going to be the UV spectrums, and that's not necessarily a bad thing, but we also have been lied to about that. So we have an epidemic of blood pressure. Right, high blood pressure. Well, UVA has been proven that when it hits the skin, right, it releases nitric oxide. Nitric oxide is a vasodilator, right? So when we think about all the advice we had and we have high blood pressure, maybe you don't have lisinopril deficiency. Maybe you have a sun deficiency. And so if we want to get our children healthy, we have to have the input that God designed, and that's called the sun. So in the shade of a tree is amazing. The green matters too. That's a whole nother rabbit trail. But you can have that baby out under a shade tree, getting all the infrared, and you're healing that baby. We have known forever, right? And I have all kinds of retired nurses that come like, well, we used to realize that the babies in the NICU that were by the window did better than the other kids. Well, we used to have heliotherapy. We used to take them outside. Cultures all over the world used to take their babies outside when they were sick, and just had different sorts of ways of going about it. If our kids are not getting sunlight, they are missing the most vital nutrient to their well-being.
Bam. All right. So I know we're coming, man. We only have a little time left with Logan because he's got somewhere to go. But man, I think he did a great way. I mean, there's so much more he could talk about concerning light. So perhaps we'll have to do that at another time. But talk to me about the water. So you said this three-legged stool, light, water, magnetism. Talk to me about the water.
Yeah, and we hit on that a little bit, right, with just the metabolic water. But the cancer topic and water is extremely important, and we do need to understand that. I don't know, Bill, if we got enough time to really go through deuterium, but deuterium is an isotope of hydrogen. So when we think of this electron transport chain, we hit on mitochondria a little bit. Hydrogen is one proton and one electron. This is what actually feeds the electron transport chain, is hydrogen. So when you have deuterium, which has a neutron in there, so it's an isotope of hydrogen, it has different magneto and electrochemistry effects in there. All right, so it makes things harder to break apart. If you have a deuterium atom where a hydrogen should be, it makes the ATPase. This is the little nanomotor that produces ATP. It breaks it, so then you have no ATP, and so many other things. And this is why, like, deuterium depleted water are absolutely crucial. This is why a ketogenic diet is actually beneficial, because carbohydrates, sugars are higher in deuterium than fats, which is the lowest, and then proteins in the middle. So when you understand that water is not simply this inert thing, it's a liquid crystal. It stores information. It stores light. Light is information, and you can see the complexity goes on and on and on. And so this is also evident in babies, right? The 6 month or 6 week old that we just were asked about is going to have a much higher water content in the body, right? And as we age, we know, everybody's been told, right, you're 90% water, and then when you get older, you're 50%, right? And there's a spectrum. All of this entire processes are crucial to how we go about with thriving too. And the water topic's massive, Billy. It's huge.
Okay, so I know we're not going to be able to get into the magnetism in a deep way right now. So I want you to tell me, I mean, because as we're coming to a close here, I mean, maybe can you throw out maybe 3 health practices that people could adopt today that could actually move the needle in a massive way in their lives?
Massive way. So yes, throw all of your fad diet ideologies out the window. They're not legitimate. Okay, and I know how hyperbolic and maybe frustrating that may seem, because we all have these tribes and we fight about keto and carnivore and vegan and all the different things, but none of it matters. The rules, the guidelines that I go by with diet are local, seasonal, and natural. So it depends on where you are, when you are, and what's available, right? So if it is North Carolina right now, I'm going to say you probably have some blackberries. You probably have some fruits going on. I guarantee you got eggs and raw milk and meat, right? Now in the winter, you're not going to have any of those fruits. You're not having any of those vegetables.
Got meat.
Right, you got meat. So like in a temperate climate, the winter is a carnivore lifestyle. So meat does not cause cancer. This is nonsense. Meat does not clog your arteries. That is nonsense. And so as you keep diving into that, if you will just go to the farmer's market or go to your neighbor that's a farmer or raise it yourself, that's what you should be eating. That's the diet advice. The living advice is get the shoes off. Get out in the sun, go breathe some fresh air, be around trees. They're producing oxygen and terpenes and other phytochemicals that you're breathing in. You're connected to the ground. We have a charge state. So health is around negative 200 millivolts. When we start going positive, this is another way that we get sick. So we need to have a negative charge. The tree, that healthy tree, is going to be there, between negative 200, negative 400 millivolts. Be in nature. That's huge. A walk, a camp trip, float trip, whatever. Get rid of the sunglasses. Sunglasses killing people. I've said over and over and over, and I get some pushback on this. I would rather my loved ones sit down and smoke a pack of cigarettes a day than wear sunglasses, as long as they're smoking in the sun. Now, I know that sounds crazy, and we probably lost some people there, but the sunglasses are a huge huge problem because we have visual photoreceptors and we have non-visual photoreceptors. And any time that we create conflicting signals, we are creating chaos. If you refer back to what we said earlier, inflammation, chaos, these are synonymous. You are absolutely destroying yourself when you wear sunglasses, period. The other one is be in the morning sun. This sets up all of the circadian cycles, right? It gives us our cortisol drop. It starts the production of melatonin. It increases the body's ability to produce that water. It sets all of the cycles, everything with that morning sun. If we're going to metabolize fat, this is called beta oxidation. We have to have the TCA cycle spinning clockwise. That only happens when you see the sunrise.
Man, I couldn't have said it better myself. In fact, I've been trying to say it for several weeks now, and everything you described there, got to be honest, in the summer, it's been a little bit more difficult with the diet, and I blame me for that because I am doing all the other things properly. I'm staying away from the blue light, which means, oh my goodness, like you were mentioning, local. It's blueberry season right now, bro. So that means blueberry pie. And I'm eating entirely too much of it here lately. But not with all things in moderation. But when she makes a whole pie, I feel compelled to eat the whole thing. So anyway, doing those other things, yes, I agree with you, man. I'm feeling so much better. And if all the people out there dealing with high blood pressure, man, would just go out there and get some sunlight, for crying out loud. I got this app that Dr. Alexis Cowan talked about. It's called D-Minder. Logan, it blew my mind. First of all, when I first started doing this maybe 3 months ago, my D was in the toilet. I'm talking about like 20 nanograms per milliliter, which is insanely low. And people with darker pigment need to be out. It takes you longer to cross the finish line. As of today, I'm about 78 nanograms per milliliter. And depending on whom you ask, you should be somewhere between 60 and 80. So, I'm doing pretty good in that regard because, like I said, I've been doing everything backwards for the longest time. So let that be a lesson to all of you out there, folks. I mean, you can go get your blood test and go find out all these things for yourself. It's not just the vitamin D, but Logan's talking about how just getting the sunlight, being in the sunlight. And honestly, since we got a couple of minutes left, could you explain real quickly, though, the importance of not having light in your life at certain times?
Yeah, absolutely. So for one thing that came to mind as you were talking is when we have blue light, right, which is a non-native EMF. I know we're going to hammer 5G and Wi-Fi, but blue light is a non-native EMF too, right? We can't be myopic in our understanding of what is going on there. So this liberates vitamin A. Okay, and so vitamin A being liberated causes just chaos. It turns into a wrecking ball that is just breaking all heme proteins. So heme proteins are a lot. This is an iron-based protein. And what ends up happening is we lower vitamin D levels when we have excessive liberated vitamin A. So we can be getting plenty of sun. And if we're getting too much blue light, too much liberated vitamin A, now we're reducing the vitamin D that should be natural. Supplementations, I'm not for supplementation at all. By the way. So we have all kinds of people with a tan in LA, where Petra is based out of, that have low vitamin D with a tan. Now that shouldn't make sense, right? Well, it does when you understand the effects of these non-native EMFs that's going on there. Liberated vitamin A just being one example of that. When you are constantly exposed to the non-native EMFs, you're not producing that metabolic water. Melanin is breaking down faster than we can rebuild it. So we have to have those inputs as well. And we need to understand that we're destroying all of the building blocks to make this system coherent when we are in an artificial environment. So when it needs to be dark at night, if you want to do your Netflix and stuff in the evening, cover with a blanket, get your blue blocker glasses. If you need to be on your phone, get a red mode, right? Or try to be off of it. Turn that dude on airplane mode at night. Get a timer for your Wi-Fi router to make it go off. Hardwire things that you can. Iris software for the computer. My screen's red, and I've got, I don't know if you see this, my light is actually a reptile light. So it's infrared and UVA, right? So because I can't be out in the sun at the moment. So mitigate those things that are causing a lot of problems. I'm telling you, LEDs and fluorescents are causing a lot of problems. Put in the inputs. Now, this reptile light is not a substitute for the sun. It's just a Band-Aid bridge between me doing this and being outside. The dark and the light are yoked, and they matter a whole lot. The vitamin D, one thing I want to throw in there really real quick is that, man, this is a cyclical thing too. Nothing is stagnant in nature, so we don't need to go for a 80 vitamin D level, and that's our goal 12 months out of the year, depending on where we are. It should fluctuate. This is something that's really, really important. And there are a lot of precursors that happen in order to make sulfated vitamin D. And it goes through the kidneys, the liver. There's a lot of things that are in between that vitamin D that's in a supplement, like that you take, and what the body's actually doing. They're not the same thing. They're not even close.
Yeah, that's why I'm getting mine all natural. I got rid of the vitamin D supplement and the whole 9 yards. But yeah, the reptile light. So basically, if you got to be around blue in a natural source, what you're doing is offsetting it by adding in the other spectrum. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. So, man, there's a whole lot to unpack here, y'all, and there's a whole lot more. Maybe next time we can get into the magnetism. But, Logan, I know you got to get bouncing here. Why don't you tell everybody where they can find you?
Yeah, so if you do Facebook, Me and McGee Market, so it's like the Joplin song, right? Me and Bobby McGee. That's what my grandma named the market after. So Facebook, I do a lot of stuff on there. Big on food, local food systems, a lot of health stuff. I rile people up. We're very, very involved in getting like ivermectin over the counter in Arkansas pushed through. Raw milk legislation. We have the best raw milk laws in the country now. It's been a fight. So I put all that out there. And so it's just to try to be open and transparent with all of that. The podcast is Sowing Prosperity. So SOWING Prosperity. We've got a support group. This is geared mostly towards cancer. We've got a whole thing of free resources, but the conversations, the weekly Q&A, it does have to be behind a paywall because I'll get killed or deplatformed or whatever. So all of that is where we try to put it out. The podcast is nonstop. I'm typically putting out about 2 a week, and most of them have all the little letters behind their names, or they're doing something absolutely incredible.
Well, you're doing fantastic work, folks. I highly recommend you check out his podcast. It's a must listen for me. Look, I'm a farmer. I'm out here all day. I don't wear the earbuds like I used to anymore, but I'm out there listening to Logan, and I'm listening to him actually sounding way. And I told him the first time I ever talked to him, I was like, dude, he sounded like he knew the topic more than some of these people with these highfalutin titles after their names. So trust me, folks, you're going to learn a whole lot from him. And it's been such a joy for me to get to know him. Well, I want to thank everybody in the chat. I'm sorry I didn't get to a lot of your questions out there. I know Steve said he's out there working in the daylight, building houses, and he's feeling so much better. Look, folks, just go out there, ditch everything they tell you is a manufactured lie. Let me just break it down that way. All right, y'all, I want to thank my guests, and I want to thank everybody out here. I know you got so many other things you could do. Until next time, as we always say here at the Pimpcast, stay alert, stay alive.
Nature, the knowledge rings, roots that run deep, wisdom from Sowing, permaculture dreams, let the ideas unfold. I'm grooving with the truth. Feeling nature's groove. Who's got the answers? All we need to do, listen to the earth, they got us through. Plant seeds of change, watch the world spin. From the smallest sprout to harmony begin. In the cycle of life, where the magic's alive. Tune it to the beat, feel the fire and thrive. Cultivating truth. Moving with the earth, so much green.